So, hello and welcome, everybody. Hello and welcome if you're watching us live today. My name is Chris Armbruster. I'm the director of Data Lift at the AI Guild, and I have the pleasure of having with me today Irena Bojarovska, who's a data scientist at Zalando, and Justin Shenk, who is a managing director at VisioLab and actually also a co-founder of said company. Now, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, and I'm going to start with Irena. Irena, my first question for you is, so you're a data scientist at Zalando, and you're enjoying your data career. When and how did you get into it?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for your question. So I got there, I can say, I think before coming into industry. So I studied applied mathematics and computer science. And in my PhD, I was focusing on what we call applied harmonic analysis. This was digital signal processing, and as I could see also afterwards, so I was started dealing with working with data and with data science when it wasn't called like this, and we used methods that are used in machine learning and in data science, but with different names maybe, and coming from a different background. So for example, my thesis was on compressed sensing, and that is basically lasso with L1 regularization. So I started on a very early stage, so to say. This was around 2012, 2015. But in my career in industry, actually, I took a different path and started as an analyst, something like a business analyst, and then switched to applied science and machine learning. So there I took the perspective or working with the business, descriptive analytics. And then when I joined Zalando, again, I was working as an analyst, and since 2018, I started working as an applied scientist and data scientist in marketing, working on causal inference and similar topics for marketing activities.
Thank you, Irena. We'll get back to the marketing and the analytics and your data scientist role in a minute. First, I'm going to move over to Justin. Hello, Justin. The same actually for you. So, how and when did you get started?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Chris, and greetings to the audience. So I also came through a somewhat science background. Originally, I had studied biology in the US and was interested in understanding the brain and worked in the neuroimaging lab. So we would get images of brain activation, and my biological training helped me a little bit to get an idea about it, but really needed some more math and statistical skills to crack that. So finding an overwhelming amount of data and not knowing what to do with it led me to be interested in machine learning and the idea of automatically finding patterns in data. Then some further experience with programming and web development, and then eventually computer vision. I studied, returned to studies and studied cognitive science with a focus on AI in Germany. And there was opened a lot of doors to AI and machine learning, which I'm really happy about having the chance to study and work in. So computer vision in that direction. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Returning back to Irena, so Justin just mentioned that in some of the stuff that he was looking at data, and there was actually a lot of it. So I was wondering, if you look at your role at Zalando as a data scientist, you mentioned marketing. I know some of what you do. What kind of data are you actually looking at, and how much of it?
Yeah, so we also have a lot of data, but I think it can be more. So in our case, when we are looking at marketing data and it's sales data, of course, we are limited by the company. Our company is growing. We do have a lot of data, but at the end of the day, since we are having some kind of regularity, so let's say we have a daily data, right? So the data in our case is per day. And at the end, if we are looking, let's say, usually coming from 2017 or 2018, when we started collecting data from a particular variables that we are interested in. So we are speaking about historical data of 2 to 3 to 4 years. So I would say it's not really huge. But what is big is also the number of variables that we are interested in. Let's say when it comes to marketing, we distinguish between offline marketing and online marketing. And this is very different because offline marketing, like TV, you have only one variable. Usually this is the TV what tell you what they think that they approach, right? And that's it. This is one number. You try to do something with it. When we come to online marketing, there is a huge amount of data that and huge amount of variables that you can look at, especially when we think about social media. So then you have the amount of likes and shares and video views, and then the length of the view, and also similarly sales data. So usually we were thinking, I think in the standard world, we are thinking about, okay, how many people bought, but we are also interested in the a long-term effect, so the customer lifetime value, right? So then you're interested in the process of the customer. So how many times he returned in our shop in the last 2 weeks or 1 month, and or how, so this kind of behavior. And here you can kind of generate unlimited amount of variables just by thinking what is interesting for you to see. And in that sense, we have a lot of data, a lot of variables that we can work with and try to find some patterns. So at the end, as Justin said, it's all about finding those patterns and explain them.
Thank you, Irena. Justin, I think you also have a keen interest in data. So how is it on your side?
Yeah, certainly. So I think it's really cool to hear about Irina's kind of problems that they're solving there at Zalando. I think computer vision is really one special area of data science and AI, and I have to admit I'm really interested in also even a wider range. So some of the things we're looking at, for example, is also time series behavioral data of when do customers check out at a canteen, and what kind of combinations of foods are ordered. This is what we do at VisioLab. So I think having this wide range of data available to look at and being able to apply a range of methods is what I think makes technology with data super interesting. Of course, at the end of the day, you want to be able to provide some results with the specific task, and computer vision being quite specialized, it's still super exciting to see how you can use similar methods across the whole data platform, like deep learning.
Understood. So computer vision is what VisioLab focuses on?
Yes. We do food recognition in cafeterias.
In food, okay. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Certainly. So doing computer vision based recognition of food on a point of sale system. So if you go to a cafeteria, say at a university or at a company canteen, and you pick up the food on a tray and you put it under an iPad, then you'll get the food will be recognized on the iPad, so you can just tap your card and pay. So it reduces the time for checkouts, which is the goal. It also lets you scale up the checkouts, so you can have multiple checkouts at once. But this is a challenge because computer vision works really, really well when you have a very constrained use case, and the more you open up that use case, the more challenging it is. So it's actually pretty cutting edge stuff. It makes it really exciting to work on, but of course, yeah, it's the normal startup roller coaster of emotions that comes with it.
Thank you, Justin. Irena, you mentioned, you spoke a little bit about the fact that you have historical data, and you said 2, 3, 4 years. Then you also made a comment, well, that's actually not that much yet, so to speak, in historical sense. But on the other hand, of course, if your company is running marketing campaigns, they're always running them now. So what's the relationship in your case of having availability of data over a long time versus optimizing for what you're doing at the moment?
Yes, so for us, it's also very important to look at the historical data, because what we are trying to do is causal analysis on our marketing activities. That is, we try to understand the impact of our campaigns, and we can only do this. Well, there are many things ways how to do this, but one of the options how to do this is with A/B testing. And for A/B testing, it means that we are trying to answer the question, what would have happened if we didn't run this ad, right? And for this, we are running tests. That means we switch on the ad in some regions. In our case, let's say we are speaking about geo testing, and we switch off in other regions. And that means that we need this historical data for the modeling, for the causal impact, model, an algorithm, for example, because we want to know, okay, which are in order to run A/B tests, in order to run these tests, you need to know which regions perform similarly. And for this, you need historical data, right? Because if we want to kind of have parallel worlds, right? So we want to have two worlds that usually perform the same, and then in one we make some changes, and in the other one we don't make that change, and then we see what happened in the two parallel worlds. But we want to know, okay, which are the worlds that we can consider as identical, right? So surely we cannot think that the behavior of our customers in Italy, let's say, is the same as the one in Germany, and even in Italy, north of Italy and the south of Italy has a very different pattern, because of various reasons, right? So for this, we have to look at the historical data. And in general, also, when it comes to marketing, the crucial question is, how much should I spend, right? As is in this saying, like, I spend 1 million marketing and I know one half of my marketing spend is wasted. I just don't know which half, right? So we want to know which spend is spent well first, but second, we also want to know how much spending is optimal, right? And in order to do this, we also want to answer the question, if I spend X amount, what will be the effect of this? So, and in order to be able to answer this hypothetical question, what will happen if I invest X? For this, we need historical data. This is because we want our answer to be based on data, right? So the machine to learn what will happen if I invest X, or if I increase my invest for X%, let's say, this type of questions.
Okay, thank you, Irina. I have a follow-up question. Actually, Justin, while you're listening, if you also have a follow-up question for Irina in a minute, I will come back to you and ask you, and then we'll come back to you. So you have actually launched us into what you're going to also be presenting at the Data Lift Summit in June. We have the title here, Automated Geo A/B Testing for Marketing. You've just explained, so to speak, the geo component with reference to Italy. You also explained the A/B part of it, I think, already. Now, automated. That sounds interesting. That sounds kind of cool. One tends to think, okay, we all know A/B testing. Yes, so we define the A and the B, we let it run, and now you say you've automated the testing. What does that mean?
Yeah, so automation for us means a process that requires the least amount of human interaction, because all this testing are related to the campaigns that we run in marketing, right? And the campaigns, they have their own schedule, they have their own planning, their own media budget, and so on, and they happen at some certain periods of time. And previously, one needed a lot of, and Zalando is huge, so as you can imagine, so there are lots of teams involved working on one campaign. So there we had to speak a lot here and there with the people who are organizing the campaign about implementing the test. So then we need to set up the test. First, we need to make some pre-analysis, right? And prepare for the test. Then we have to make sure that we implement the test and we run it. After the test is finished, we want to analyze the results. And finally, we want to give the results of this analysis to the people who want to steer the next campaigns. And we want to automate this process as much as possible. So ideally, and this is what we are working at the moment, like that we have one calendar where you see all the campaigns. They're just listed there in this calendar. And then the computer is checking every day, okay, is this calendar 4 weeks before a campaign starts? What do I have to do? Oh, I have to run the preparation. I ran the preparation. I calculated this region split. I send it to the people who need to check this. And they say, yeah, this looks good. Okay, so then 1 week before, an automated email is sent. Can you please confirm that this is done, right? The test is finished. Again, the computer checked, the test is finished, automatically analyzes the results and share the outcome with the people and say, okay, here is the outcome. So these are the things that we want to implement. And we are using also a different platforms or different technologies than before. So when I first joined, this was really 2018, our code was written in R. Then we wrote the code in Python and partially automate it. But now we are working with Databricks. Now the data itself is on S3. We are using the data lake. So we want to improve on the technical side too, and that we have maybe Airflow for scheduling the jobs. And so from a technical perspective, that we are also able to monitor this whole process very well. So we are working on both automation of the front end, so to say, so how the users use this, as well as in the back end for us, what does it mean? How can we deploy it in such a way that it's easy to fix bugs, easy to maintain, and easy to add new features, new models?
Great, thank you, Irena. Justin, do you have a question or comment to that?
Sure. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear about how you kind of pair together or how you're complementary with the marketing team. Is there any like best practice that helps a data science team to kind of communicate or interface with the marketing team so that you can kind of help them understand the insights, or is it already pretty clear by the time you deliver the results what they should do with it and how to interpret it?
So actually on this we work together, because I think we don't want to be the ones, so we are the ones who are able to answer questions, but then what to do with these answers, and also even coming up what is the question, right? So they are the ones who are the experts, so they have the questions, and we have to be the ones who are finding answers, right? So for this we work together, and let's say for this project, like this full automation, we have a series of workshops. So every week we have a workshop where we actually talk together and think, okay, what is important for you, what do you want to know, right? Where you how you understand. And then on our side we say, okay, we can answer this one, and actually the way we answer is this and this, because when we say our answer is, I don't know, €2 or 5%, of course they need to know what does it mean, right? Or on another hand, like when we say there are two tests, so let's say we want to test two marketing channels in parallel, and then we have to explain, okay, maybe this is not possible, or it's possible but only with some certain constraints. So we have to talk a lot, and that's why we have lots of meetings and lots of documentation. We try to document too. And yeah, another thing is that what's important to understand for people, because with the A/B testing we have to turn off marketing, and this is I think this is the hardest part, to kind of convince people not to spend money for the sake of figuring out the effect or understanding the success of the marketing. So they kind of have to give up a little bit, with the hope that then it will help them invest the money better the next time. So this is something that we have to be very clear, what does it mean and why it's actually a win and not a lose in that sense.
Thank you, Irena. Justin, let's go back to your side, please. So I understand that at the moment what you're doing is actually you're scanning a food tray and automating, so to speak, automating the point of sale, if I got it correctly. I want to invite you to build a bridge to your presentation on the 23rd of June at the Data Lift Summit, which is called Developing and Monitoring AI Solutions with Limited Labeled Data. And I wanted to start at the labeled data, because I'm guessing that this is partly what's going on there. So can you expand a bit on this?
Sure. So to expand on the data aspect, it's definitely, as you can imagine, the more data you have, the better in terms of being able to model the data and find patterns. And that's also true in computer vision. And for us, the case where we have very limited scope of data in our point of sale, but we want to be able to recognize a very wide distribution of data all over the world. So it's kind of capturing those two ends of the stick, so to speak, that's really a challenge. And how, as a technical manager or as a data scientist, how do you work with those constraints? And how do you, if you need to push back to the business side and say, hey, here's what we can and can't do, here's what we need to improve our model. How do you also interpret the results that you have under very limited data certainty or very limited ability to generalize? So those are particular challenges that a lot of early stage startups will face, but also larger companies that are trying new projects. They'll want to understand what can we do with small data? So this is going to help you work through and think through some of those challenges and some approaches and lessons that I've learned.
Irena, do you have a question or comment?
I have a question, and actually, I was so willing to ask when Justin just started explaining the
Go ahead,
problem that
Chris.
I'm working on, because I had this as an idea. So, I mean, have you think about possibilities of extending the application of your model? For example, once you are able to detect, I mean, if you need to detect what is to be paid, then you know exactly what's on that plate and you can actually tell much more. For example, how many calories is this dish having, right? Or what are the nutrition values, things like this. And then I can think of a lot of applications. So not a cafeteria, but maybe a single person just preparing something for their lunch and then wanting to count their calories because of a special diet or something like this. Have you been considering these other applications? And maybe you have something else in mind that I haven't think of.
Yeah, Irina, that's good feedback and good question. Definitely, it's interesting. It's something that we all experience food every day. I don't know anyone who doesn't have some experience with food throughout their day. So it's really exciting for me to be in a field where I can think about it in every part of my life, like, how could I apply AI to this? And with food, especially, it would be great to count calories. I know a lot of people in fitness have asked for, could you make this for calorie tracking? And there definitely is potential there. Actually, even for the past 8 to 10 years, there have been prototypes or papers coming out showing this and that approach. And we do see that there's a good potential with our technology to be there to collect enough data to make a model, and also high quality models. I think that's the thing that's lacking with the other products that are on the market. So making that happen in the next few years would be a dream for me. So we'll see if we can get there. But it is a different animal altogether because there's such a wide variety of foods to recognize in the wild. That's definitely a challenge.
And is this data currently open sourcely available? So the data of the photographs, because for example, I was thinking about Zalando. So Zalando also has a computer vision component regarding clothes, right? So being able to recognize the pattern and recognize type of clothes. And actually, I think it's one of the largest open source databases for fashion. It's by Zalando and it's used all over the world. And this is always what makes me proud, kind of knowing that is a data set is collected by Zalando and then shared with everyone who wants to try it out and use for their own purposes. Do you plan to do something similar?
Yeah, it's Zalando's fashion data set is one of the first computer vision data sets I looked at, and it was also really inspiring. Probably helped them stick in my head better than any advertisement that I've seen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely am a big fan and promoter of open source and open data. Yeah, it would be great. It would be great to make a huge data set and publicize it. There already are a bunch of data sets that are out there. And what's missing right now is the ability to connect the images with that really high quality, rich data about nutrition and so forth. And I think it may be one of those things that if you bring them together and make it public, that might be too much of your business model given away for it to be worth it. But I would certainly love to see that, because just so much good positive vibes come from open data and open source. If we can risk it, we'll try.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. I have one more follow-up, and I would like to focus on the word limited. So I think this might be interesting to our audience in particular. So labeled data, then limited labeled data. So how do you see this playing out? You know, when you hear limited labeled data, you could say, okay, actually, really, we want to go to much more labeled data, and the limited is a limitation. Or is it more like, well, there's always going to the label data is always going to be limited. We have to deal with the limited, and we need to find solutions so that it works out. Never mind the limitations. What's your take on this?
Well, that's a really great question. Also, some philosophical undertones there. So, like, you can't have abilities without limitations, right? So, Or you can try and then let me know how that goes. But I do see that there's always going to be limitations. Whatever your service you're providing, there's going to be some constraints, especially with AI. It's going to work in some cases and not in others. And I think that's like the challenge I find interfacing with the business team on our side is how to understand and communicate those constraints internally and also externally to the customers, because the customer wants everything perfect all the time. How do you kind of bridge that gap? And it's really, I think, from the technical side, it's about understanding the limits of what's possible with your data, with your technology. And on the business side, it's about expanding the scope of what's possible.
Okay, I have a follow-up question here from Nitin. Why not use synthetic data for limited data cases?
Well, that's a great question. We definitely can use synthetic data. In some cases, it works especially better than others. So, for example, say we're just missing a few different perspectives. Say we want to do a face recognition, and we have 3D faces of 999 people, but not of that one additional person. We can make a model with those 999 people and generate what we think would be the other side of that person's face for that 1 out of 1,000. And in that case, synthetic data works pretty well. Where it's harder for our case, we see that food is something that has not only a lot of intra-class variants, so like a lot of different ways that a certain spaghetti dish can look, but you also have a lot of variation between different food groups. So it definitely is helpful when we have those 909 photos of the spaghetti that we do some augmentation and we get an additional photo. Where it's less helpful is when you want to recognize a totally new dish that's not within the distribution of the data that you have in your training set. So in other words, synthetic works really well when you already have a lot of data. And when you have less data, or when your data is kind of out of distribution, then synthetic data doesn't always help you as much. But so it really depends on the case. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. So we're approaching 1 o'clock Central European time. Irena, on your side, is there any final comment or question that you have?
I think only thank you for organizing this and inviting everyone to join the summit. I'm looking forward to the spring and looking forward to the summer and to the summit and hearing many more interesting use cases and collaborating, networking with everyone. So thanks again only for your session. And if anyone has other follow-up questions, you can just ping me on LinkedIn.
Great. So you can find Irena Bojarovska on LinkedIn if you like. Justin, over to you. Final remarks.
Yeah, I'll also say thanks for organizing, and you guys feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. And I'll just add that I'm excited that we get to finally have another Berlin AI meetup conference. It's been too many years since the last one.
Yes, indeed. It's been a long time due to COVID. So this is happening in June. Part of the event is actually going to be outdoors, so we're making the best also of the situation for that to happen. So very many thanks to the both of you. I hope the audience has enjoyed this. We are live again next Wednesday, same spot, same time, so 12:30 Central European time every Wednesday, and see you then.